I will now open the meeting. Thank you. I'll firstly make an acknowledgement of country. Just like to acknowledge we're on the lands of the Ngadjuri and Kaurna people, the traditional custodians of the land, and we pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging. And then I would like to welcome our new CEO, Daryl. Welcome aboard, and I'm sure all elected members are going to give you a very easy time. No tough questions, and we look forward to watching your career blossom in the light to council. So,
thank you very much.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, thank you for your confidence, and I look forward to repaying that. We've got a really good team, some good processes. Thank you. As I was saying, thank you for your confidence and in selecting me. I look forward to repaying you on that. Got a good team, good processes. I look forward to the one-on-one meetings to find out a bit about each other. And yeah, look forward to it.
Thanks, Daryl. And I'll also make note that we have pretty certainly have a new politician representing our area, David Patton. I've phoned David and offered him our congratulations, and he's quite keen to sit down with us and see what he can do to help us in his new role as the member for this area. So it's quite a change from our previous representatives who were very, very active, and we got on very well with. So I'll move on to attendance. I think we're all present. All elected members are present. We have nil apologies, no leave of absence, no non-attendance. The confirmation of the minutes of the meeting of the 24th of February. They've been passed, moved by Michael, seconded by Martin. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Communications. There's a list of my communications on the sheet, and I attended the funeral with Councillor Collin of our former councillor Sharon Lewis, who died just recently. Sharon was a councillor for 2 years, and 2 terms, not 2 years, 2 terms. And I would like to move a acknowledgement of her service as a motion. I think Corey's putting it up on the board now, are you, Corey? Thank you, Colin. Councillor Colin. She died. She was only 59, so from cancer. So it's very, very sad. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. I also attended the reopening of the Hewitt Centre with several councillors, Councillor Martin, Councillor Peter, Councillor Simon, and Pepper is going to do a chicken dance for us because I'm very disappointed you're not going to give us a demonstration. Okay, as does anyone else on a cross communications? Any collective members communications? Documents to be tabled. Nil. Petitions. Nil. Deputation and presentation. Well, we're very lucky today to have a deputation from the RDA, Barossa, Gawler Light and Adelaide Plains. We have Jen Lynch and Rolf Binder, who are going to make a presentation to us about what's going on with the RDA, which is very good. So just welcome Jen to the rostrum.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you. Great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Lynch. I'm very proudly the CEO and Director of Regional Development for RDA Barossa, Gawler Light and Adelaide Plains. And this evening, I'm also joined by our Chair, Mr. Rolf Binder. Very warm thanks and acknowledgement to Mayor Bill Close, Deputy Mayor Michael Phillips-Ryder, thank you, all elected members, and to newly appointed Chief Executive, Mr. Daryl Wicker. Looking forward to working with you as well too. To the executive team, as well as a special mention and thanks to former interim CEO, Mr. Mark McShane, and acknowledgement to Mr. Kyron Chappell, General Manager for Economic Development, for the invitation, excuse me, to present regarding our activities and outcomes over the past nearly 12 months, with thanks to this Council's funding and support. We have prepared a presentation this evening that does provide an exhaustive overview of all of the activities that we've undertaken with thanks to your funding and support for nearly the past 12 months. But in the interest of keeping to allocated time and to preserve time for any questions at the end, we have supplied the presentation in full for Council to review at your convenience. And this has been supplied to the Council's team as well too. Okay, just stepping forward, great. So that we can really demonstrate the impact of our activities over the past 12 months and therefore Council's return on investment. Again, thank you for your support and your funding. I'll very briefly refresh you, I promise there's no test at the end, refresh Council's understanding of who we are, what we do, what it is that we focus on, how we do it, and what we deliver on behalf of this Council area and for our region as well too. Please bear with me as I skip through some of these slides now. I won't try to give you digital vertigo. Okay. So our sole purpose as an RDA is really to support sustainable and good economic development across regional Australia and certainly on behalf of the BGLAP region. We take a helicopter view across our region and into adjacent RDAs. There's 50 right across the map of Australia. As well as we take that ecosystems thinking and over the horizons approach. We work with councils and both sides of government, or all sides of government now, and we're very neutral in our approach and take that evidence base to good conversation, discussion, and hopefully policy influence and decision making. Just stepping ahead still. Specifically touching on our revenue and funding, with thanks to this Council's support, of which in recent years it's circa $46,000 per annum, plus CPI, for every dollar, looking at some basic BMAT mathematics, for every dollar that this Council chips in, we turn that into $18 thereafter with just core funding, alongside what is state and federal government funding as well. And for every dollar that this council puts in, we turn that into a further $29 when you consider what is the total of all the core funding from federal, state and local governments, including this one, as well as leverage to receive further competitive or application-based project funding as well. So directly over the past nearly 12 months, by my tally and this report, we've directly supported 25 light regional council businesses, more than 50 individuals from this council area, and 6 light regional council committees. In terms of our regional state of play, our regional state of play considers firstly the whole of the BGLAP region, not just the light regional council area, and it can still and really be summarised as both peri-urban and high growth, and I'll touch on that a little bit further. Stepping forward to our regional priorities, presently they are, and we focus on, housing, workforce skills and education, infrastructure, land use planning and sustainability. And in order to address against those strategic priorities on behalf of the region and for the 6,200 circa businesses that we represent, we undertake a series of what we call core business activities. So activities we undertake on a day-to-day, week-to-week, year-to-year basis with thanks to the core funding we receive from this council, as well as state and federal government. And really they are business development, so building that capability and capacity into our local businesses and therefore our region. Sector development, so looking after what are the top value or top employing sectors across the BGLAP region. Economic development, so that may look like investment attraction, case management or economic modelling to support grant applications, again investment attraction, or looking at what is construction and operational total value created in the region and jobs created, as well as we undertake quite a significant amount of advocacy, consultation and communications as well. Stepping ahead, sorry. Excuse me. Excellent. So in addition to our core day-to-day business activities, we also take that core funding, as I mentioned, and leverage that against the core funding to receive, hopefully, competitive grant application-based funding to deliver what are major programs of work or projects over a shorter period of time. Presently, that delivers for us across our region what is the Regional Leadership Development Program, the Barossa Regional University Campus, the Drought Support Business Fundamentals Program, with thanks to the Office for Small and Family Business and the South Australian Government. And more recently, we've started undertaking what is a peri-urban study into early childhood education and care needs right across the BGLAP region. We've also partnered with RDA, Adelaide Hills, Fleurieu and Kangaroo Island. So we're starting to understand what is the early childhood education and care needs across the peri-urban ring route around South Australia, around Adelaide and into our outer regions as well. Thinking about what's changed in nearly the past 12 months since we last presented in May last year, external to our region, I'm sure Council will certainly note what was the release of the Greater Adelaide Regional Plan. The envisaged growth for our region, we've run the numbers, is 28% of the state's projected population growth. So that means we have nearly just over 1 in 4 people coming to our region to live, and 26% of the state's projected or envisaged housing growth across our region. So just over 1 in 4 new houses in the coming 20 to 30 years will be built in this region as well. A little bit closer to the region, internally, whilst the top 3 industries by employment haven't changed, what's notable is that the care economy has now overtaken manufacturing as the #1 employer across our region, which I think really signals what are then the infrastructure, workforce skills and education requirements that are needed now and into the future years across this region as well. And more closer to home within our organisation, for us, our strategic priorities and focus are currently in review with the development and soon the release of an endorsed strategic plan. Largely, our regional strategic priorities that I touched on earlier will remain largely unchanged. No surprises when you think of housing and infrastructure, for example, but I think that our focus will be further refined. And so far as at this point, our regional priorities for the coming 3 years will be further refined and further focused on water security and climate, housing and workforce, as well as infrastructure across that whole spectrum of civic, social, so education, healthcare, etc., as well as digital. Looking ahead, as I mentioned, we'll be releasing a refreshed and refined strategic plan. So quite honed strategic priorities, therefore more focused operation and hopefully very visible and further deepened impact with thanks to your core funding. Second to that, in support of addressing what are water needs right across the region for all users, all water types, at all water specificity, so specs, I suppose, is a better word. We'll be looking at how this RDA can play a greater role in bringing those conversations together. Thank you. To look at solving for some of the water infrastructure sequencing, finance and policy, and continuing to just get on with it and delivering meaningful outcomes via core business activities and major projects as well. I've just been told there's a 1-minute wind up here, so I'm going to be very, very quick with some of the outcomes that we've delivered. As I mentioned, an integrated water working group, and I'll touch on in the middle of the slide here the delivery of the Business Fundamentals Drought Support Program, of which the program has supported 6 out of 9 of the program's total participants from this area alone. And more recently, we were a part of what was the assessment or the initial support and then final assessment of the Enabling Infrastructure Program delivered by the state government, which saw the Greenock Centenary Park awarded circa $60,000 to undertake a stormwater feasibility study as well. Again, sorry for the digital well through here. And just finally, I'll now invite our chair just to speak on behalf of our governance and board arrangements over the last 12 months and the coming future as well. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Mayor Close and elected members. I know we're out of time, but I'll probably go for a few more minutes. Firstly, I'd like to welcome Daryl Wicker, and I look forward to working with you on the RDA board and with your council. Just to quickly look at our board, it's a skills-based board, which is our choice to do. And the highest single representation on the board does actually come from the Light Regional Council. Andrew Morford, who's the Deputy Chair, who's allegedly shearing today. Natalie Seaman, who lives in Greenock, and Bridget Kimber, who's probably well known to you locally as a very entrepreneurial business person. We're easy to work with. We can be the good cop and the bad cop in your situation. So when we work with government, we have the right to complain, where maybe it's a little bit delicate that council complains, and then we can go the other way. We can praise where, you know, council's not allowed to be so praised, and we're respected amongst the three levels of government. I've got some sort of little points to put to you that we've got to start thinking about the future. So the first comment I want to make is understand that the government is looking to others, whether developers or councils, to help underpin infrastructure. This is becoming more and more evident. The council is looking at your balance sheets, the strength of your balance sheets, to leverage off of that. And the sad thing of all is developers are being looked upon more and more. How can we change that? How can the thinking change that it should actually be government's role, because it's lagging and delaying a lot of things? Associated with that is the need for employment lands, but we know we're struggling with employment lands regionally because of the whole water supply. The government has said that will take a while before they do consider it, but we've somehow got to maintain the momentum. It's our responsibility to maintain the momentum and keep the interest going to ensure that we get good employment lands. We've got to start thinking beyond what do regions really offer beyond housing. How do we create community? How do we create sustainable communities? How do we bring people together? And that brings us into the situation as Roseworthy is booming. You know, how do you attract the right people? How do we create a major town in Roseworthy and make it successful? I'd also like to let us start thinking together about over the horizon, what are we going to do once the housing influx ceases, when it slows down? How do we create communities? What do we do beyond that? And more importantly, I think we want to work with Light to find the perfect balance. The southern end of the Light Council is very peri-urban at present, but we want to try and work out how to retain the beautiful rural feeling that is in the northern area. So that's what I look forward to, working with you into the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob and Jen. Are there any questions to the very thorough presentation, I say? Yeah, Councillor Collins.
I've just got one question. You're mentioning you're going to concentrate on the water in the next 12 months, or probably the next 20 years, but where do you think the water is going to come from? Like, the government doesn't seem to be giving much indication of what's happening. So what are you going to be advocating for, and how are you going to achieve what you want to achieve?
At this point, I don't know that it's necessarily incumbent upon our RDA to go and find the other water sources. I think there's plenty of other agencies and private organisations that can do that as well. Our role, we see, is to facilitate a number of the conversations that at best don't appear to be coordinated and actually coming together to discuss, well, what are the water types, sources, users, specs required, pricing required, etc. And how can we best look at that from a whole of systems thinking approach, as opposed to just addressing what is a potable water issue, potentially a stormwater issue, etc. as well. So creating, I suppose, an avenue for conversation to occur so that hopefully multiple issues can be solved at once, as opposed to necessarily finding funding, putting pipes in the ground and so forth as well. Further that, I think a role of any RDA across Australia is to look at, well, what's best practice outside of Australia? And so if that includes our RDA taking a view of how are other countries addressing this as an issue, particularly in countries that have peri-urban development as well, and that semi-state of rural versus also needing to address housing and growth. How can we take any good practice examples and bring them back into Australia as well? So that's what we're hoping to achieve via that integrated water working group.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks very much. I think we're going to be working quite extensively with the growth that's been thrust upon this council. So it's going to be a a work in progress for quite a number, probably the next 20 years, as you say, Councillor Collins. So we look forward to sharing your time with you and getting Daryl on board, onto your board to keep his mind fresh and active. Would be great. Thank you very much. Okay, we keep moving on. 7's adjourned business. There's nil. 8 action items. To do that, we'll go through as we normally do. So we have page 7. Councillor Collins.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned earlier, we might have a new local member, and the previous 2 candidates were very keen on Clare Road. I'm just wondering whether we should be advocating to the new member about funding for Clare Road. That's on our behalf.
Thanks, Councillor Collins. It's certainly on the list of things that we want to speak to him about straight away. He's deputy mayor of the Adelaide Plains Council. He's aware of the funding requirements that the councils need. So that's certainly one of the top of the list that Daryl and I will speak to him, and we'll see what comes of all the work that's done previously with the other councillors, the other politicians. So we just got to keep it right up there in front of everyone as much as we can, I think. So page 8. Page 9. Oh, Councillor Peter.
Regarding the Anglevale Bridge, I've suggested previously that for foot traffic and I suppose bicycle traffic, an outrigger be put on the side of the existing bridge at minimum cost. It's just an idea.
Thanks, Councillor Peter. I know it was budgeted. The Playford did budget, put a cost that as an option, didn't they, Megan? I think, and even that costing was way beyond our capacity. And if Playford pull out totally, which they are, I don't think we've got much hope to do anything at this stage, unfortunately. Page 10. Nice, I've done 9. So I'm on to page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Okay, so we now move on to recommendations from committees. There's a recommendation there from the Governance Advisory Panel, and it's just the minutes that were in the public forum. Would someone like to move those minutes so true and correct? Councillor Michael, thank you. Seconded. Councillor Lynette, all in favour? Thank you. We then go to 10 infrastructure and sustainability reports. It's the update of where we are at the moment, Jason. Luckily, we've had some rain to get a bit of work done. Any questions to Jason? Councillor Peter?
That's in the text, there is Growley Road, Growley Road. Actually, it should be Crowley, Crowley, after a former resident. So it's not growly, it's growl.
Thanks, Peter. I don't know if the grader driver found it. Did he, Jason? Thanks, councillor Peter. No further questions. There's a recommendation on the page. Oh, questions, councillor
Yeah,
Olsen?
thank you. Thanks, Mayor Bill. As you would have known, we received a letter from the resident on Wasleys Road that's recently been graded, I understand last Thursday, and they've written to the three ward councillors and the mayor just saying that yes, it's been graded, but they've graded huge big rocks into the traffic area, and with the CFS truck going along there at great speeds, etc., they've had to now pick the rocks. And she's also raised that yes, it's in for it to be sheeted, and they were looking for an update, but I think she was writing to say that it's actually quite dangerous with the rocks that are on the road now. So just looking for an update for her. I think she'll be listening in tonight.
We'll pan over to Megan.
If I hold it. Thank you, Mayor Bill. I've not received that correspondence, so I'd like to see that to be able to appropriately address it. Thank you. But I do believe we're in prep work for resheeting Wasleys Road now anyway.
Yeah, well, councillor, just to comment on that, Megan says that the graders are out there at the present time. Actually, at work. Councillor Collin.
I'd just like to mention, I did get a phone call from Lydia Koleski, who I think we all had correspondence from her about Parbs Road, and she's very grateful for the upgrade of her road. So I just thought I'd pass that on to the team.
Thanks, Colin. I'm sure it's appreciated. Okay, there's a recommendation on the page, bottom of page 16. Councillor Peters moved it, seconded. Councillor Simon, all in favour? That's carried. Jump to 11. Where am I? .1 reports for information. Hewitt Centre update. Expansion of services. Pepper, would you like to make a comment there?
Thanks, Mayor Bill. Just a quick update to go that we hit the deadline of taking on the centre from the 31st of January, and that was certainly a push to get it to that stage. But yeah, pleasingly, we've been able to do that. We had a wedding to facilitate on the 1st of February, so that was certainly a journey in that process, but pleased to say that we've been able to accommodate the pre-existing bookings in there. Some slight adjustments we've made along the way, but that's been in communication with those people that have made the bookings. We've got the online booking system up and running and live as well, and the community members that had made inquiries sort of in the January, early February period, we contacted them once it was up and running, and I think we had 6 bookings within the space of 2 days, and we've been having regular bookings since, and getting positive feedback that the model that we've shifted to with having the space available for hire, it's unstaffed, but we give them an induction prior to coming in, and then they can bring in their food, they can do a liquor licence and do BYO, so still within all the required legislation there, but giving that flexibility for different groups to use it there. And then also, yeah, having the community day on Sunday. Sorry, the brain's still catching up with me there, to be able to have the community come in and we receive comments around sort of not knowing that the building was there, or even the grassed area, or that they thought maybe it was a corporate space, but now they can see it's community space. So I think from that perspective, of people coming in and just knowing that they can come in and sit. We've got some regulars that come in on a Tuesday morning unfortunately, they're Crow supporters. So I did say, look, 2 days in and I'm going to have to ask you to leave, but we've let them come back. But yeah, just being able to build that community. This, as of yesterday, we've got Lifeblood in there for the next 2 weeks as well. So we hired out to them. And of course, as people come in for that, oh, excellent. Councillor Martin has been there, done that. And so while people are waiting there, pounce on them and just say, you know, come and have a look at the library as well, or they just sort of wander and explore. And also getting feedback for those that were there on the day would have seen we had some of the big sticky notes up on the wall, and just asking people what they're looking for from the space as well. And we'll leave those up for a little while too, just to get feedback on if people are looking for certain programs or the timing around different events or services, so that we can be, I guess, making it as accessible to them and meeting their needs there. We've had a couple of inquiries that we're now moving on to regarding cafe as well. So that's something that we're moving into that next stage of looking at an expression of interest, so that there's a level of fairness and interest around that too. But yeah, it's been, I think, from council making the decision in late November to getting it up and running at the end of January. It's been an effort, but I think a good decision by council, and the community have been responding well, which is positive. And yeah, good to see that there. And I mean, this only happened because the elected members have made that decision, approved the budget to get that set up there, and also from the broader administration, need to acknowledge there, because we had every team in the council helping out to get this result. So yeah, no, I think a great opportunity there, and we'll continue. I put in there that we're going to do letterbox drops and things like that. We're still looking to do that. We ran out a bit of time, but yeah, going to get it out there, not just on social media, but in hard copy and that as well, and go from there. So yeah, that's sort of, and yeah, close to about 200 people on Sunday. So that's a great result there.
Through the chair, could I ask a
Councillor
question?
Lynette?
That bees program, that's the one we had for the books for the little babies, wasn't it? Is this massage parent workshop, is that an additional cost, or is it still under that same program?
Yeah, so to answer that one, that's not an additional cost to us. That's something that Raising Literacy are using the funding. So the 100,000 that they've dedicated to us over the 5 years, part of that has got, or that's paid for that baby massage class there. So that's not an additional cost to council. That's being provided by Raising Literacy Australia.
Thanks, Pepper. Congratulations too for all the team and all the work for getting that. And it was really quite interesting, the number of people that said, I didn't know this was here. Yeah, so they didn't they go in the back and they see the beautiful lawn area. Wow, this is fabulous. That's just an unknown piece of our facilities. So well done. Any questions for Pepper? Okay. 12.2, the Roseworthy Township expansion, Kangaroo Flat Road, native vegetation. We're just going to, Karen was going to make a short comment about it.
Thank you, Mayor Bill. Probably the only thing I wanted to highlight was that the administration has been working with developers for about 2 years on this particular subject to avoid clearance of these trees. Unfortunately, all the options that we explored were not viable. So sort of we are at the point where yeah, a developer will be moving forward with the road upgrade due to their staging of their adjacent development. And also a driver of the this particular clearance is also SA Water's installation of potable water infrastructure within that road reserve, which would also require the removal of some trees as well. So, and I guess that component is outside of a council's control. So, unavoidable clearance, I guess, of some comfort is the significant plantings that developers will to establish the new plantings. I think the net benefit or the net outcome in years to come will certainly be better than the stand of trees that exist at the moment. happy to answer any questions.
Thanks,
Bill.
Are there any questions for Corin? Councillor Simon?
Yes, through the chair, thank you. Well, I've got a few questions, but the first one, so the road reserve that's there currently, that's 20 meters wide, is that correct? So in your report, it says that it needs to be widened to 30 meters. So does that mean that we have to, there's some land acquisition involved in that?
Please.
Through the chair, that's all been done through the land division process at no cost to the council. So as part of the deeds that apply, the roads deed in particular, there are a series of interventions that had to occur for every developer. And one of those for the developers on both sides of that road was to enable 5 metres of land to go from 20 metres to a 30-metre road reserve. So that's progressively been obtained through the land division process.
Excellent. Councillor Simon?
Thank you for that. It's another question that I had is it talks about that for each tree that's going to get cut down, and I couldn't find any number of how many trees we're actually going to lose there. 3 new trees going to get planted, but it sort of talks about they're going to be planted in that adjacent reserve. So to me, that would mean that if you don't cut these trees down in that reserve, you're not going to plant any trees. So I mean, how's either we're planting 3 new trees somewhere where there wouldn't have been any trees planted, and then it's actually a gain, or these trees would have been planted anyway, and then it's really that's not a trade-off that I can see as valid.
Okay, Lisa.
Through the chair, Councillor Simon. So there is a street tree per allotment. That's a minimum. Corner allotments get 2 street trees. And in the reserves that are being retained in that particular development, the area where you've got the large basins, you'd be familiar towards road. The trees you see there are largely remaining intact, and the wetland and the stormwater basins are going around those. So we're not seeing a wholesale clearance, but what happens with all the reserves that are proposed, we get additional trees in addition to the new street trees. So you'll see roughly 1,000 trees be brought into Quindoo alone progressively.
And all due respect, the question was, these 1,000 trees would not be planted if these trees don't get cleared, then those 1,000 trees wouldn't be planted. Is that correct?
No, not at all. As part of a land division process, we look at meeting environmental conditions. So the street trees were already negotiated with every developer, as is the reserves. So with a reserve and the way the legislation works currently, a developer only has to provide a 12.5% per development. There's no requirement to provide street trees, no requirement to put vegetation, no requirement to put in trees, playground spaces or any of that. They're all things we negotiate through the relationships we have with those developers. So everything we are achieving is over and above the minimum requirements through the Act.
Which I think is really a great outcome. So I'm just trying to find out, this great outcome would happen irrespective of cutting these trees or not. That's sort of my point, because it talks here about this being a great environmental outcome by having 3 new trees instead of 1 tree that is already there. But if you would have planted those 1,000 trees, as you just said, anyway, then it's not a great benefit, because you plant these trees anyway, and you just minus those trees that we're going to lose.
To a degree, that is correct. The only benefit is with the involvement of Native Vegetation Council. They've actually required the planting of the same species, which is not something the council could have mandated. So that's the only additional benefit.
Good. So if I may, so if you're talking about I was going to bring that up a bit later, but if you're talking about the species, I mean, in your report, it mentions Eucalyptus porosa and Eucalyptus odorata, mealybox and peppermint box, except that neither of these trees are actually there. The actual trees that are living there are Eucalyptus largiflorus or river box. So I'm just wondering how accurate is this report if it actually can't even get the species of the eucalypts right?
I can't speak to the actual physical report on the individual trees. I know the peppermint box was an actual rare species. That's all I can talk to in terms of my experience from the planning application, Councillor Simon.
If I may, so this leads me to the next point. So it's like whoever we don't have access to the report that actually got written or the application process that led to the approval of the removal of that native vegetation. We don't have that. We don't know how the calculation was done for the $10,000 as a significant, I wouldn't call it a significant payment, biodiversity fund payment, because we don't even know. Usually that's done on a per tree basis, if I'm correct. So each tree that gets removed requires some sort of payment into that, to replace it and all that. But we don't know how many trees are going to get cut down. So how is this $9,000 calculated or 10,000, which seems very low for potentially 20 or 30 trees that are going to get cut down. And then another point that I would make is, like, we always talk about what's the environmental benefit of these trees, and they say, like, oh, there's no species found there except possibly like a ring-tailed possum or whatever, something like that. But there's obviously, I went through that this morning. There was about 10 species of birds there. There's all sorts of other stuff. So my whole point is that we get a nice report that talks about trees that are severely degraded and nearly dead, which is entirely not true. I had two arborists through there. They both said these trees are in good condition. I had two arborists through there. They both said that the species that is referred to in here is not the species that is there. So obviously there's something amiss there. I had the same arborists going through there saying these trees are between 200 and 500 years old. So all these trees been there long before any of us was here, any white settlement. So to then say that, and this is written in this report, as the proposed works will deliver significant improvements to environmental outcomes, I just find that a bit hard to swallow. So my point is, I can concede that this is probably not something that we can stop, as Karen pointed out. SA Water wants to dig their pipe through that's out of our area of that we can dictate what they can do or what they can't do. But I would just really like to see before this gets just through, I would love to see some arborist reports saying that these trees are that bad. I would love to see how they come up with the $10,000 calculated money that needs to be paid. I would love to see a report that actually refers to the right species. I just think we don't have the information to just swallow it. I personally don't feel we as elected members have enough information to just swallow this as a fait accompli and these things are going to be gone. I think I would want to fight a little bit harder for that. So to that respect, I actually do have a motion that I would love to move. And I don't know if I can read it or...
Mayor Bill, may I please make some commentary to assist Councillor Simon perhaps before he moves a motion?
Yeah.
If that's acceptable. Thank you, through the chair. This is not a decision of the council, Councillor Zeller. It's actually the Native Vegetation Council who's a relevant authority with regards to native vegetation. So the application that was submitted was separate to the land division application. In regards to the significant environmental benefit, which is a payment that is required, that is calculated on a ranking of the actual trees. There's roughly 100 trees that will be removed through this process along Kangaroo Flat Road. It is a substantial number, and that's to accommodate the essential infrastructure. So there's nothing that the council can do to reverse this decision. The decision has been made by the board of the Native Vegetation Council. That's just a factual matter to perhaps have regard to, just for your information. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. I make the point to Councillor Simon, this is a report for information. We're not actually making a decision on this report. Yeah, Darryl, yes, please.
Through the chair, thank you. I second exactly that. It is a third-party decision and a third-party process, but I think there could be some value in understanding that process. So perhaps a motion along the lines of, and of course it's up to the council collectively to go along with it, but that we seek a briefing with the Native Education Council to understand their processes. And I think that's a better way of understanding it moving forward. An independent briefing outside of a council decision is what I would suggest.
Thanks, Darryl. Councillor Simon.
I think that's a great suggestion. That's pretty much what my motion would have done. Is I just want to understand, because if there's 100 trees removed, and according to that, we're going to get $9,000 or $10,000 payments. So 1,000, what do you say? 100 trees removed. That's like $10 a tree. That just seems a bit little for all these trees being removed. So I would love to understand that process. So my motion pretty much does say that. It's probably goes a little bit further. Just said I just would want to stop any of this clearing going ahead until the council understands how it comes about. Because this report that we have, it really doesn't explain it to me, and hopefully to anyone else, in a way that you can go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And one more question I would love to ask Lisa is, as I understand it, the road reserve is our land, is council's land. So in what way? I mean, I understand that the Native Veg Council can approve an application to remove the trees, but those trees still get removed on council's land. So couldn't council say you can't do that, like irrespective of the third party saying you can do it?
Councillor Simon, as part of the roads deed and what was actually required through the whole rezoning process, the minister of the day and the government of the day declared that road as the east-west freight route. So that is how we have had to go from a widening of that road. As you would know, I know you know the area very well, it is very difficult to even get certain vehicles under there because the road's widening, you have the canopies overhanging the actual roadway. So regardless of the fact that it is a council road, we have to accommodate SA Water infrastructure, SA Water sewer, and we have to accommodate the east-west freight route. We don't have any discretion in any of that. Those trees inevitably would have to be removed. There is no way to salvage them unless you wanted us to investigate potentially trying to acquire up to 50 metres of land from adjoining property owners at an extremely large cost. We did negotiate with the developers. We've asked them to sacrifice land. We've had extensive additional designs even considered, and unfortunately with no avail. So because of where the water has to go, because of the demand, because of the housing roadmap, SA Water have to deliver our product by a certain time. So we've been under a lot of pressure. It is council road, and yes, we have had to lend a letter of support in order to get this through. I have contributed to that letter as part of the process.
Thanks, Lisa. Look, I'd like to, before you make any motions, Councillor Simon, is that we move the recommendation that the report is received and noted. And then perhaps if you want to do something after that stage, Councillor Simon, you're free to do so. So Councillor Annette and Councillor Martin, moved and seconded. All in favour that the reports be carried. Thank you. Councillor Martin.
So a brief point, I think 100 trees into 10,000 is $100 a tree, or 99 in this case.
Councillor Simon, do you want to do anything further at this stage?
Yes, if I can, I think but the proposition that our CEO said, I think is a great thing. I think I would love to understand all those different, that massive work that you guys done to try to alleviate this. And because I mean, in my simple mind, you could just build the road next to it because it's like, there's plenty of space everywhere. But that's probably not how things work. But but I would love to understand that all the different options that we put forward and why they weren't considered. I would love to understand how these trees get just put down for $100, which I think they're a lot more worth than that. I'd love to understand how this application looked like to the native veg and what the response was, because I would have thought these people would want to protect native vegetation, specifically 200-year-old trees. And so that's basically what my motion is. So I don't know if you want me to read it out though. Yes, I mean, I originally said that to stop all vegetation clearing activity within the Kangaroo Flat Road Reserve between High Street and Towards Road until such time that the following documentation is presented to council. That's basically what it is.
Perhaps if you hand, and we can move this, we can look at this at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, okay.
If you hand your motion to Caitlin and Corey, they can look at it and see what they can do with it, and we'll look at it at the end of the meeting. Thank you. All right, so we'll keep moving on to 13, reports for decision. Annual business plan, budget update, long-term financial plan, progress update, early service level, affordability decision gateway. And Kyron's got a presentation to make about this. Thanks, Kyron. I want to tell them the news, Corin, that the software program is now working. I'm very excited, very relieved. Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Thanks, Corin.
Thank you, Mayor Bill. So I just wanted to provide a bit of a progress update on our preparation of the 26-27 annual business plan budget and updated long-term financial plan. It hasn't gone as smoothly to date as we had hoped, hence the email I forwarded to elected members on Friday. It's just a bit of an update because we certainly aren't going to be in a position to present some budget scenarios this evening, which is what we had intended. But firstly, I just wanted to recap some of the context, the financial sustainability context that we provided at the information session to Council on the 3rd of Feb this year. Provide an update to Council on our progress and some of those constraints, particularly around our rates modelling and the delays that has caused. And also share some initial insights on property valuation changes, that's sort of what you've got in your handout there that I've just provided. And then talk about a revised pathway forward. So what's the impact on those rates modelling delays? So I'm just casting our minds back to the 3rd of Feb when we spoke about our trending declination of our operating surplus over the last few years, which resulted in a pretty significant operating deficit in 24-25, and also still forecasting a deficit for 25-26. Some of the causes behind that has been expense increases beyond CPI and also our general rate revenue in real terms having been below, I guess, CPI. That's when we exclude growth. So I guess the challenge for council is how do you recover, how do you deal with those increases in expenses beyond CPI to still provide the same services, without raising or by raising rates, and in the context of, benchmarking against CPI. So in February, we did have a really early long-term financial plan model, an update to that, that had a look at raising rates, increasing rates by CPI plus 2%. That's for the excluded growth rate base. And under that scenario, due to those flow-through impacts from 24-25 and what we're experiencing in 25-26, we were still looking at 4 years of deficits, which we were suggesting is not financially sustainable, which creates some pressure on the council to have a look at raising rates above that that level or have a look at some service changes. So that's sort of the context that we're still in. Haven't seen anything different come through in our budget work to date that suggests that has changed. So that will still be a challenge for the council. And CPI has also gone up since that discussion in February as well. And some of our cost pressures, of course. So what had we intended to present tonight? Well, we're going to present some updated capital valuations, some of those modelled rate revenue scenarios for a lower, mid and upper rate increase, test those scenarios for affordability under different service levels, and hopefully seek some direction from council on what is the preferred scenario so that we'd have a single scenario that we'd be able to work up in more detail to go to a special meeting on the 31st, and that would then flow through to Audit and Risk Committee in April and then back to council at its April ordinary meeting to hopefully decide to go out on public consultation for. So unfortunately, we've had some rates modelling issues. Effectively, we have received the first lot of capital valuation data from the Valuer General on the 10th of March, and we're receiving weekly updates on that. Some subtle changes here and there each week. But yeah, unfortunately, the modelling software has been down since that time, but it has been restored as of yesterday. We're still testing it just to see to make sure it makes sense. But yeah, we're hoping to get on crunching some numbers on some of those scenarios that we had intended to, but that's effectively put us behind by about a week or so. So what does that mean in terms? Well, we can't present those scenarios this evening, so we were looking at presenting an increase of CPI plus 1.5%, also a higher end scenario, CPI plus 3.5%. So we can't present that tonight. I guess that means that council can't have a look at some of those service level reductions and give us direction on what the preferred scenario is. So apologies for that. But what have we done? So we've had a look at some of the capital valuations. We've been able to have a look at what are the growth properties coming through the Valuer General's data, and that's ongoing. So we sort of see changes from week to week on that. And I thought I'd just outline what we consider to be growth that we're excluding from our initial assessment. So it's new allotments, so subdivision activity that's creating new vacant land. Dwellings that are under construction or newly completed, so conversion of vacant land from the previous year to an unfinished house coming up, or something that might have been previously an unfinished house and then moving to a finished house, or other properties where there's been some major improvements approved, and so they might not necessarily be residential lots. We've had an analysis of valuation movements by land use, but also by suburb. So that's there in the handout. Still subject to change, of course, but it gives you some insights about what's happening around the district, and also a look at properties that are having statistically unusual increases, so that higher end of the spectrum. So we've excluded growth from this analysis, but there's still properties that have gone up by a fair bit more than the average. So we've had a look at that. That's important context if council's going to explore discretionary rebates like it has in the last few years, to try and set, well, what percent rate increase threshold would you be looking to set to provide rebates? Work that we've been doing in parallel on the expense side is having a look at the detailed operating budget, validating all the submissions that we've received from managers, and reviewing cost escalation across key service areas. So I've certainly had to have a think about fuel costs given current environment. I wanted to, so this isn't in your handout, probably because it's just a bit too early to provide this particular graph, because it may change a bit, but I just wanted to show the shape of the increases in rates payable that are likely to play out this year based upon the changes in capital valuation. So effectively this graph plots the residential properties and the primary production properties. So they're the two main land uses that make up our rateable assessments, and we plot them in order of their potential rate increase. So we do that by model, or firstly we exclude the growth properties, and then we just apply the same rate in the dollar that we're using in 25-26, multiplied by the capital valuation, and then we get an increase. And then we plot that for every property from lowest to highest, and that creates those curves. So you'll see in pink, that line represents the residential land uses. So you'll see there at the start of the curve, you've got a few negative properties that have gone down in value effectively, a small number that have had no change in value, and then you get a sort of steep increase of properties up to about sort of 13% increase. And then the majority of properties have an increase between about 13 and 14%. Then we have a bit of an increase after that, where it sort of steps up to an increase between about 14% and 17.5%. Another batch of properties that have got increases between sort of 17.5% and 19%, and then a final small batch that sort of go up to about 30% increase. So that's what the residential curve looks like. The primary production curve there is in blue, and that's certainly not as much increase as what residential properties have experienced, but there's a tail to it. So, you know, certainly at the back end, there's some properties that are approaching those same increases that residential properties experience. So what does that mean for council in terms of where you might set a discretionary rebate threshold? There's a couple of points on those curves that you might consider. Certainly not asking council to make any decisions around this evening, otherwise we would have presented it differently, but just some observations. There's a potential line at about 14%, whereby if you set that as your discretionary rebate threshold, about 30% of your residential ratepayers would be eligible for that rebate. Only about 15% of your primary production ratepayers. If you bump that threshold up to an increase of about 17%, yeah, you've got about 22% of your residential ratepayers that would be eligible, but only about 7 or 8% of your primary production ratepayers. If you wanted certainty and a number that fits both residential and primary production, where those curves cross is around about 18.5%. So that's where you've definitely got confidence that the same percent of ratepayers would be eligible for that type of increase. So these curves, depending upon where council wants to, how much total revenue the council wants to raise, these curves are likely just to move up or down. They'll keep the same profile in terms of their shape, but they'll just either move up or down a bit, if that makes sense. Second bit of intelligence that I've left you with you in hard copy, and it does say subject to change because that's just our early analysis, and we do get changes from week to week from the Valuer General. But that actually just lists by suburb, I guess, the number of properties. So these do exclude what we've identified as growth properties, but lists the number of properties in each land use by suburb, as well as what the average increase would be in terms of a percent, primarily driven by the capital value increase. So it just gives you some observations about where some of those larger increases are happening, and where some of the negative, so the reductions in values are happening. There's probably not, there's possibly some surprises in there, but possibly some results that elected members would expect just in terms of where the property sales and growth's occurring sort of down south, but also, just as an observation, in Kapunda, there's still, quite a increase in residential of 17.3%, and not so much in primary production, but some areas there's definitely increases in primary production that are different to the overall average of the council area. So I encourage you to have a look at those numbers. They are subject to change, but it'll just give you a feel for what's happening in terms of capital values and how that might impact on rate revenue increases. I might take this opportunity just to answer any questions elected members have got before I've got a revised recommendation to what's in the published agenda. It's really just to deal with this delay that we've had in rates modelling. So, perhaps I'll move to that revised recommendation, but perhaps answer any questions elected members might have before we get to the recommendation.
Are there any questions? Councillor Con?
Just one thing that strikes me here is the vacant land increase is 22%. It's a lot higher than everything else. Have you got any idea why that'd be?
Look, I suspect it's driven by the growth properties. So subdivision activity, largely Gawler Belt and Roseworthy. So I haven't been in the market to purchase a vacant lot in Roseworthy, but if we saw what those prices are probably increasing year on year quite heavily, and I suspect that it's those sales that are driving the vacant land up.
So that could be quite good for us if we were to put that category up.
Any further questions? Okay, do you want to run through that revised recommendation, Karen?
Can do, Mayor Bill. So the first point is just to receive the report. So that's no different to the recommendation that was in the published agenda. Point 2 is to note the presentation that I've just delivered, but also that it outlines the delays experienced in rates revenue modelling, and receives, so this is council will receive the 2026-27 annual business plan and budget and updated long-term financial plan scenarios at a council information session or special meeting to be held 31st of March 2026. That's in order to provide further direction on a single financially sustainable scenario for council's consideration at a subsequent meeting before being presented to council's audit and risk committee in April 2026. So effectively, we're really a week behind in our process. What we were hoping to deliver tonight and seek some direction from on council really will happen on the 31st of March. That's what that recommendation achieves.
Thanks, Michael. Moved by Michael, seconded. Councillor Simon got his hand up just in front. All in favour? All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Kyle. Okay, 13.2. Four-year capital works program. Oh, sorry, Councillor Michael.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, Bill, just, I mean, I've read this, so I just wonder whether or not this is something that gets considered at the same meeting, because we don't, like, when we have the rates revenue, we can then, okay, well, this is in, that's out, or was that the intention of tonight with this?
Me just want to make a small comment about it beforehand, so.
Thank you, Mayor Bill. Elected members, I just wanted to explain the purpose of this report is the renewal program, and I'd like to acknowledge the staff, particularly in this room, who provided some considerable effort to put one together. It talks about the renewal program, so that's something that is non-discretionary funds. We've heard those terms for the discretionary and the non-discretionary. The point 3 of the recommendation, which talks about strategic grant funding, that is not all the roads that we would normally seek grant funding for. It is only the roads where we are using our renewal funds as the contribution. So there's no extra outlay to elected members or to council or ratepayers for upgrade of those roads. But I would suggest perhaps an alteration to the recommendation 4, if council choose to go with the recommendation, that council notes for inclusion, not approves, because it did relate to Kyron's previous report, which of course is now different at the time of writing, because that relates to funds which is discretionary. I'm remembering the renewal is non-discretionary. Now, if the, in particular, the 4A is not included within the adopted budget, it does throw out the capital program, particularly for Wasleys in year 1. So we held off with some of the roads for Wasleys. We aligned them with stormwater works, which are required as part of the stormwater management plan. Elected members, particularly ones that have been here for a few years, would remember all the previous budget meetings, that there's a lot of pressure from Wasleys residents in relation to stormwater, particularly Pratt Road, Jane Terrace. So this all aligns with those projects, the 450 curb and gutter in particular. So we'd have to then push them out until a future time. because it was part of the program last year, we like to plan ahead 12 months. So we've started the design for that. Happy if you would wish to move it to next week, or if you're happy to go with it as it is. And we just acknowledge that those other roads, such as Clare Road, Dawkins Road, Bethel Road Stage 3. Now that grant application is actually due to be submitted in April this year. College Road Stage 2. They're all applications or roads that require council contribution that is not funded from renewal. So they are extra funds that are required. So they're not part of this report.
Thanks, Megan. Is there any questions to Megan about that? Do you want to move that motion, that recommendation? Councillor Collin?
Yeah, I'd be happy to move it because I think it's only a budget, and at the moment the world is a changing place. So
yeah, with
the information we have at the moment, I think we're quite confident with all the work, the stuff done. I'm pretty happy with what I read. So I'd be quite happy to move it, and then in 6 months' time, if it's we'll just have to do what we have to do. But I'm pretty pleased. I'm happy to move this at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's still got to come back to the meeting in next week anyway. So it's just me, Councillor.
Oh, that changed.
Yeah, with notes instead of approves. Councillor Martin's seconded. All in favour with that alteration? Thank you. Carried. Okay, 13.3 plant fleet program. And this is pretty straightforward, I think. Are there any questions on this one? It's a long way down there, isn't it? Come on. Any questions to Jason? Someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Dean, Councillor Annette, all in favour? Carried. You can smile now, Jason. You're on. .4 event sponsorship. Event sponsorship program round 2 grant applications 25-26. Some recommendations there. Sky's here. Got any questions for Sky? Moved by Councillor Michael, seconded. Councillor Dean. All in favour? Those against? You didn't put your hand up, Councillor Peter. Or Councillor Annette didn't either. All in favour, I said. We'll do that again. That's carried. Caught you out. And we caught you both out, didn't we? Okay. We then move to 13.5 community development grants. 25-26 round 2 applications, funding submissions. It's on page 71. Sorry. Report by Lorinda, who's just graced us with his presence. Thanks, Lorinda. Any questions to Lorinda? Does a lot of work. They both do a lot of work on these grants. Councillor Michaels moved it, seconded Councillor Allison. All those in favour? That's carried. .6 Light Regional Council Disability Access and Inclusion Plan. This is a follow-up on the thing we had just recently, isn't it, Craig?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Bill, through the chair. It's a little bit of an incongruous thing to be doing a report on a plan that's just been adopted, but Lorinda assures me it's part of the process. It's just the way things have worked out this year. it is relatively straightforward accordingly.
Thanks, Greg. Any questions to Lorinda? Is there a recommendation there? Would someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Nett, seconded. Councillor Martin, all in favour? That's carried. Thank you. And then we have the Dog and Cat Management Plan 2025. This is Matthew's first report. So he's done very well. Are there any questions to this report? I'd like to move the motion, the recommendation. Councillor Martin, seconded. Councillor Collin, all in favour? That's carried. Thank you. 13.8. Wonderful Ross Creek Bridge. Megan would just like to make a comment.
Thank you, Mayor Bill. The Ross Creek Bridge report was to give elected members a little bit more information in relation to the intersection, because I know it has been a topic over the last year or so. The report doesn't talk about, or the recommendation, sorry, doesn't suggest that we seal the road. That's something for a future deliberation by council. But what it is suggesting that we do is commence the process, and it's a process only, to limit or restrict the overall length of vehicles on that road, which will in turn prevent damage to the bridge. So it does involve a public consultation process. So if the comments come back all in favour, that's great, we can go further. If not, then we'll obviously come back to elected members and let them know that feedback too.
Thanks, Megan. Are there any questions on that? There's a recommendation there. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Dean, seconded. Councillor Michael, all in favour? That's carried. Thank you. 13.9 is the Old Anglevale Bridge. And just a comment, they have reduced, it says in the report that about the speed limit, they reduced the speed limit from 100 kilometres down to 60 kilometres. And then once you get across the bridge, it immediately transfers to 50 kilometres. So they have taken some sort of safety precautions there. And you also notice that part 4 of the recommendations is that we supports continued dialogue with the City of Playford regarding long-term opportunities. So we are quite mindful of the fact that it's a risky bridge at the moment. Are there any questions for Govind?
Yeah.
Councillor Collin.
I don't really understand why the Playford Council want to spend money on acknowledging the old bridge and doing up the site, but they don't want to spend any money on putting a pedestrian bridge across where the bridge should be. It seems to me that why waste money on something like that when you should be spending on a functional thing like a bridge? It just seems stupid.
I think it's a political answer, Colin. They're doing something for the community, but they're not paying out a lot of money. I think that's probably the reason.
The point I make is why do anything if you know it's just a cop out. So they're just going to make a fake little bridge that looked like the old bridge, but the bridge was there. A practical reason was to get over the river. Yeah. No, so you just build a replica and then don't do anything. It just seems build a bridge.
Yeah, I think they'll just put a sign up with a sign on. That's all.
Exactly. So I just think it's silly.
My question, Govind, is we're going to have a big bonfire. There's a lot of wood sitting in the Playford store. Very well aged, I would think so. There's a recommendation there on the page. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Peter, thank you. Secretary Councillor Ellison, all in favour? It's carried. Less Councillor Michael. 13.10. Amendment to the Community Land Management Plan Licence Agreement Lot 2001, the Boulevard rose with the outcome of public consultation. This is the Oval at St Ives. Are there any questions on this? Are there no questions? Would someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Collins, second. Councillor Dean, all in favour? That's carried, thank you. 13.11 is the proposed reserve naming by Land Australia and Land Vision Group associated with the Rosebery Township. Megan, do you want to explain this?
Thank you, through the Mayor. In relation to the oval within the estate, so we just talked, the previous report was in relation to the Community Land Management Plan. The official name of that site is Reserve 2001, simply because it's Lot 2001, the Boulevard. This report talks about naming two properties. Point 4 of the recommendation, if elected members are wishing to clarify, just a suggestion from management that perhaps the reading of that could be adopts the name of St Ives Reserve for the public open space located on High Street, Roseworthy. Now, I understand that LVG would like the site to be called St Ives Oval. However, given that the name is to reflect the whole site and to be consistent with what we have elsewhere within the organisation, Reserve might be a more appropriate name to be added to St Ives. So St Ives Reserve is what we're suggesting.
Thanks, Megan. So you've got that, the change is from St Ives to St Ives Reserve and not St Ives, whatever it is, Ives, Oval. Yeah, St Ives, I think. Councillor Collins.
Oh, just a question. So that's, you've told Land Vision, if they want to call it the Oval, you'll negotiate with them to call it Reserve, have you? Is that how we're doing this?
They've requested, and I do remember many, many years ago, they requested that we name the Oval St Ives. So their recommendation was for St Ives Oval. I've not spoken to them directly. That was through our development team. However, I'm making the suggestion that it become Reserve to encompass the whole site. I think the name St Ives was the important part of the conversation that we initially had.
Councillor Michael.
Thanks. Just a quick question. I couldn't see, where's the one in Flourish? I couldn't see the pin, or maybe it's just in the printout that I've got. It's my printout. Yes, it is. That's where you did there. Okay, I was just curious. That's right. So, yeah, my pin didn't show up.
Okay, any further questions? So if we're happy with the changes, there's a adoption, they've been changed, Corey, on the, there's the recommendation on the screen. And would someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Dean says second. Councillor Martin, all in favour? That's carried. Thank you. So we're now to 13.12, which is the management agreement with the Kapunda Harness Racing Club. This is just the and obviously the management agreement. There's the circus is coming into town on the Harness Racing Club in the next couple of days, so we need to have this finalised before that event occurs. It is an agreement that should, it's like a 5-year agreement, but should things change in the next 5 years, I believe we can make changes to that agreement. So it's not a if there's a commercial changes. Meg, is that right?
All our management agreements have a clause that if any of the sites are to be developed, that we can take the site back. However, there's also clauses that by mutual agreement, anything can be varied.
Right, thanks, Meg. So there's a recommendation. Thanks, councillor Ellison, seconded. Councillor Collin, all in favour? It's carried. Thank you. The draft closed circuit television and security camera policy. Great report from Pepper. Is there any questions? So I said it was good, Pepper, didn't I? Thanks, Councillor Michael. Moved, seconded, Councillor Ellison. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, so we move on to 14. Questions on notice. There are no questions on notice. Any questions without notice? Oh, Councillor Simon.
Yes, if I may, just a couple of questions. I had a phone call today about the Scout Hall on Modlerville Road, and I just wondered if there's any upgrade on that. Update, sorry.
I'll tell you about this one later, Darryl. Craig.
Through the chair, the Scout Hall at Mudlawera is currently a subject of a matter that's before the Environment and Resource Development Court. So I believe there's a date in April in relation to the hearing on that matter. Yeah.
That's great. Councillor Simon.
Can I have a follow-up question on that?
Yeah.
It was that what do you say, the prospective member for Parliament for that area, which was Tony Pickles, so stuck his nose in there pretty deeply. Has it changed anything since he's not going to be, or he's not the member for Parliament anymore?
Has it changed? It's still in court.
Through the chair, I'm not in a position to comment on that question. But suffice to say, there's been a development application for an amended condition. It's been considered by the CAP, and the appeal has been lodged in relation to the CAP's upholding of the assessment manager's decision. So it's squarely in the Environment, Resource and Development Court's purview for now. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions without notice? Councillor Collins, speak through the chair, please. Okay. There are no motions on notice. Motions without notice. Councillor Simon.
There we go. So yeah, I do have a motion written down here, and if we I can I'll bring it to you. I'll cross the second point out here. We don't want to do that. You want to bring that? Thank you.
Do you want to speak to it now, Simon, so we don't?
Yes, yeah, to waste, spend some time. Yeah, now, as we talked about before, I think I would find it sad to see these trees go. I'm aware that that's probably going to be the outcome. However, I would at least be want to be well informed of what the process is that led to that, in my opinion, dire outcome. So this motion that it's just trying to do that.
Can I speak on it, Mayor?
Certainly, Mark. Councillor Mark, sorry.
I think the issue here, with respect to Councillor Simon, is that this motion is ultra virus because we can't stop the clearing of the trees, but we can receive information on how the decision was made. I think that's where we ended up. Yeah.
I think that's your motion, is that you want the information.
Yeah, it's all the first part stopping it.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, the first part of the motion indicates that council stops declaring activity.
Oh.
Councillor Michael suggested that.
Yeah,
But receiving information about the list of this position would be reasonable.
yeah. I don't think we can accept that in that form. So. No?
I tend to agree that it's not council's decision as such, but I think what you want to be is comfortable with the process and that staff are, I guess, trying to limit it where possible. So I think by bringing native veg to a.
Let's speak to Michael, sir.
Thank you. I was asked a question to comment on that, and I tend to agree that it's ultra vires in that we can't stop a decision of a third party, and it's quite clearly the native veg is set up for that explicit purpose. However, I do understand that what you want to be satisfied and comfortable with is that there's robustness around the decision in terms of the way that we negotiate those land management agreements, the way that we negotiate, and also, more importantly, how the decision is made and on what basis. So for that, I think it lends itself to having a briefing session between Native Vegetation Council and Light Regional Council. Now, then from there, you may want to look at different policies, processes, and the way that we apply that. But I think the best thing to do is to bring them to the table and understand their methodology and how it works. So that would be my recommendation. The other part where you said if but not for these being removed would have made a change to their planning. I mean, nobody will know because I would consider it like an EB. You know, staff come at 10%, we come at 1%, the meeting place is 5%, as an example. So what they would do, if they knew they're going to get stung at the end, they would commit to a minimum amount of tree planting and not go full hog at the start. So I think we're better off putting the cards at the table and negotiating the best outcome at first, and then council being satisfied that we've done that, as opposed to them keeping a bit in their pocket. We're going to go less trees in the reserve, knowing that later on we're going to have to do an amendment to meet this. So I think it's about the genuineness around it and really understanding the process. And I think having a briefing is the best way forward. That would be my recommendation.
Councillor Simon.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree with that. It just be sort of be counterproductive if those trees get bulldozed before we get a briefing. That's the only reason why I was saying I would want to stop it in that sense. I still would argue that we probably could stop it, but that's a different thing. But it would be pretty sad if we see the bulldozers there tomorrow and then we get a briefing a month later about, I mean, like that's the intent of this. It needs to be the right order. That's all. I don't know how we achieve that. I'm pretty convinced that we actually could say that they can't do it until we do this, but.
So through the chair, then it might be that council seeks an emergency meeting or an urgent meeting. I imagine there's design, there's a whole lot of stuff around that road that's going to take a considerable amount of time before we know, is it starting straight away? We're ready to go. Okay. But then we need to collect the seeds and all those other things prior to, at the very least. Yeah.
So I'm not prepared to accept that motion at this stage. Unless you want to make it a recommendation, we have urgent consultation with the native vegetation. Something of that nature would be, I'd accept that, but I don't think I'd accept that motion.
So if I can change them, just say that council receive a detail and then just get rid of the whole stopping thing, because apparently we can't do that. But just that council receives the detailed plans for infrastructure build, detailed timelines, all that sort of stuff. Just leave the whole stopping out, because I'd be really very much interested in how it comes to these, like we have squares, kilometers of empty land on one side and on the other side, but the road has to go through the only remnant vegetation that's been there for 500 years. It's just completely illogical to any normal person. So that I at least want to make sure that the process was very rigorous and understandable to the common simple mind like mine that sees this as a strange outcome. because specifically since the reports that I have seen, and that's all the information I got, are faulty on many different ways. The wrong species, the wrong arborist assessments, the wrong assessments about what the fauna look like there, and so on and so on. So I'm not confident that the process has been rigorous and good, and so therefore I think it's super important that we understand that. That's the only thing. If you can't stop it, I'm pretty much aware of that. But at least if you can see the process being rigorous and correct, that would be a good thing.
Infrastructure scares me, that if it's all infrastructure, that's a big broom.
All we've seen so far is a yellow arrow on a plan that's been around for 15 years. I've seen the last that I've seen in 2016, the exact same plan we've looked at. It says east-west transport route. What does that mean? Does anybody know what that means? On that plan with that yellow line, everything else has changed on that plan except the east-west transport route. What is the east-west transport route? Why is that going through there? Can we please, before we cut down 500-year-old trees, know what we're going to build there and why? I think that's it. But why can't we? Torture doesn't have 500-year-old trees. Why can't we know what's going to get built there and why we need to sacrifice these trees for something we don't know even what is going to get built and when it's going to get built and why it's going to get built? We just
All
don't
right,
know anything about it.
yeah, thanks, somebody had a good show. Just a point, can we change that, the council requests detailed, because it's a third party organisation we're requesting. We can't ask them to deliver it to us. Councillor Martin.
If the question I have, and that I thought we were going to get to with this motion, is that Councillor Simon has found that, or says quite clearly that some of the vegetation identified is incorrect, and that has aroused his suspicions. And that's the only information I've got. We've got some in the report, and he says no, they were wrong. He's got some arborists there, perhaps it is. So I would like to find a bit more information about the process of how they got to where they were, and also the arborists. But we've already moved to accept earlier that it's going to happen, and it's going to be a freight commodity route. It's going to be a big road, unfortunately, and that's the process is, to this point in time, has been approved for it to go through. So all we can ask now, I believe, is tell us how you got those things wrong. Don't ask about the infrastructure because the road's going through, but tell us how you got those things wrong. That's what I think.
Okay. There's a motion on the. No, sorry, Corey's got something to say.
So I just want to clarify, because it talks about the request detail plans for all infrastructure to be built on Kangaroo Flat Road. Do we want the other parts that are on there as well? Or
yeah,
what are we doing with?
I don't know who you're requesting the detailed plans from.
Yeah, and where were they to be brought to?
Sam, but yeah, I'm lost with that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mayor Bill. There's a lot in what's been talked about and the direction here in terms of what's been put forward. So, if I may, in brief summary, we, as I understand where Councillor Ziller is coming from, you have some valid questions about verifying information that's come to your attention in terms of the approvals process. So there's that element. You asked questions just now about the East-West Freight Link in terms of where that's come from. The history of that is relatively easily accessed and available in terms of the process of the concept plan and the rezoning. The very short answer to that is that the rezoning process relied on state agencies, the key one being the Department of Transport and Infrastructure. I think their acronym was at the time, who were keen to have an access route through Roseworthy. We've questioned that in the time since at different points, but the stipulation, the requirement has remained. In this particular circumstance, the difficulty is that it is a dedicated road reserve. It's there for the purposes of a road. And the addition to that we touched on initially of the expansion either side with the road widening is built around the idea of expanding it to what its future may become. In the case of the East-West Freight Link when that's needed. I could go through the process in very brief terms that staff have followed. I know Lisa and her team, Kyron, through the chair of the Roseworthy panel, the internal task force, has at every step sought options. Can we go around this? Can we split the road? Can we look at acquiring land next door? Will developers become to the party in terms of that? The difficulty there is coming to an equitable outcome, simply put. One developer might say, well, why does it need to be 50 metres of my land? Why not? What's the other party's contributing? The other party might say, well, we'll put additional trees on our land if it's not on our land. Some have looked either way. There has been a very detailed process of looking to try to find ways to retain these trees. But the difficulty has come with the additional infrastructure, the SA Water infrastructure in particular, which is very much about straightforward connection. And that might go through root zones. So bringing that all together, we can bring together certain information to talk about the processes that we followed as management to get us to this point. We ultimately did, as Lisa said, put forward a position where really as an end result, we supported the application and recognising that it had to happen to move things forward. But what I would caution, just in the way that this is phrased before us, some of this information are detailed plans that may be subject to copyright. We may not have the ability to circulate those. Lisa, I don't know if you have a position or view on that, but I am guarded about suggesting that we release perhaps all detailed plans and information where that might be a criticism that comes back to us later. But in terms of touching base with the Native Vegetation Council, as CEO Darryl has said, and asking about their processes, we can certainly seek for a briefing. And I think it's always helpful to have an understanding of how third parties go through their processes and evaluate these sorts of sensitive matters. Urgency obviously being dependent on their availability.
Right.
If I think I retract all of it and we just move forward. Just one thing I would want to say, I have lodged the FOI request with the Native Vegetation Council, and they're obviously very forthcoming, so I'll wait for that. And since there's nothing, it looks like there's nothing we can do about it, let's do it. All I wanted to try to say, like, I'm super against it, and I think it's just quite crazy that we're doing this, but yeah. So be it. So I'll withdraw the motion, or if that's a thing I can do, and we just forget about it all.
Thanks, Councillor Simon. Yeah, I think we all appreciate your concern with the trees and maintenance of vegetation. Councillor Collin.
Actually, we were here when Michael Higginbotham actually told us he's going to retain them. So that was said to us. So I think Simon saying, it's not out of the blue that was a request that was mentioned by Simon, a direct question to one of the developers, but
he did retain. He's bitumised up to his driveway and retained all the trees up to that space. But
I'm just saying, Simon did ask him directly, and he did say. The other thing is, I'd like to, as a farmer, I've got a few trees I wouldn't mind bowling over, and I'm not allowed to, so it just seems to be real sandy, different.
Just put SA Water through, or a transmission line, perhaps. Okay, thanks for that debate. We'll now move on to the confidential items. And the recycled water Freeling CWMS. So we have to move into confidence, and we've got to shut things off yet, do we, Caitlin, or move in first? So there's a recommendation there that we move into confidence. Someone like to move that way? Councillor Martin, seconded. Councillor Michael, all in favour? It's carried. Thank you.